Of course, you want people to find your church's website.
And you've probably talked with a marketing professional that said your church website needs good SEO so people can find it when they do a web search.
But what if we told you that Google might have killed the need for you to even worry about this?
Take everything you know about websites, throw it out the window. Let's talk about the best way for people to find your church website. Now, as we all know, Matt, one of the most important jobs of a church leader is properly optimizing their website so that way people can find it when they do a Google search.
And of course, every seminary has taught every church leader how to do this, right?
So according to Moz, which is a leader of all the things web search, SEO, search engine optimization, is a set of practices designed to improve the appearance and positioning of web pages and organic search results. Because organic search is the most prominent way for people to discover and access online content, and a good SEO strategy is essential for improving the quality and quantity of traffic to your website.
Yes, and by organic search, that's opposed to paid ads. So this means that you're not paying to promote your site as a first option in a search. People are searching in Google and then finding your website on their own. And there's lots of different variables to what optimizes your website for a search engine optimization.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So you have to regularly post content to your website.
Yep.
If it's a static page that you're not changing or updating at all, Google thinks it's just dead and doesn't promote it.
Yep.
Is your website mobile friendly? Can people actually navigate and spend time on it?
If
on their
your
mobile
website's
device?
not mobile friendly, Google is going to make that go down.
Yes, because people are most likely finding your website on a mobile device.
Yeah.
Also, do you have certain keywords? In other words, the terms that people are searching or entering into a search, do you have those words and those phrases sprinkled throughout the text on your website? Also, how long people spend on your website, it determines whether or not Google thinks that people actually like being on your website and will then promote it. And also, is your address on the website?
Yeah, your physical address.
Yeah, your physical address. Is your church's physical address somewhere easy to find on the website? Because people will likely go there to your website to find the address so they can then get the directions they need to get to your church. And there's also other little things like you can maybe add certain hashtags or add tags to any images you add, your photo tags. There's lots of other little things you can do to optimize your website for a search engine.
And these are all really good things in the church realm because it gives that weight for people to actually find you when they're searching you. But there is one thing that may hold more weight than all of the things you just mentioned for most churches, and it's Google Maps.
Google Maps. Okay, let's talk about it.
All right, Matt, so the Google Business Profile, formerly known as Google My Business.
The artist formerly known as Google My Business.
I still don't know why they changed the name. It's kind of the same thing. But this is how your church gets on Google Maps. By the way, we have an article that shows how to do that if your church has not yet created a Google Business Profile.
And we'll add a link to that article in the description below this video. Now, it's hugely important to be on Google Maps. The number one reason is because it's the most popular online map in the world. So if you're not showing up on that map, most people aren't going to find your church in a Google Maps search.
And let's just show the importance of this. So I'm open up a web browser and desktop computer here, and I'm just going to search churches near me and see
super generic.
Google's already trying to think what I want to look for here. And so I search it. The first thing I see, it's Google Maps. Google Maps is pulling from this before any of the other search results here.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you got the map on the right, and on the left are listings on that map.
Yes.
So Promised Land Baptist Church, Westside Christian Church. Those are churches that you see as red pins on that map to the right. Nice.
Now I'm going to do this more hyper-localized just because this is how some people search for churches, especially if they want to go to a church in a specific area.
Yeah.
So they'll say churches in Riverside. There we go. Riverside, Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
I search it, and same thing. It is placing Google Maps front of everything.
And one thing I want to point out, something I notice, is in that map, there are some large pins with a little cross, like Riverside Baptist Church, Riverside Avenue Christian Church, but there are also some little red dots that aren't as big or as prominent as the others. And that's because those churches are in the area, so therefore they fit the criteria, the search criteria. But the other churches are promoted by Google, not as an ad, not promoted as an ad, but in other words, they are almost like with search engine optimization, they're at the top of the search results.
Yes.
Because they have the best Google business profile and whatever other data that Google is looking for.
Yeah, and we should show this on a phone just because at the end of the day, people are
Yes.
searching for churches on their phone.
Yeah, they're
most
doing
the
all
time.
of this on a mobile device. So I've got a phone here. I'll go ahead and I'm just going to open up my browser. And I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and we're going to start over. Here we go. So I'm going to type in, like Wes did, I'm just going to start with churches near me. Really generic. And there we go. We'll say we'll allow you to use my location. There we go. Okay, so just like Wes saw earlier, the Google Maps listings, even though I'm just in a basic Google search, Google Maps is the first option that Google promotes. So there's a map here and then the top 3 listings. Even though there are other churches in the area, these 3 are the first things that are going to show up. And there's a button below the listings that says more places. I can click on that. That'll give me an even wider map search and give me even more listings that I can choose from. And if I select one of these options, it takes me to where I can see some photos for that church. We're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. And some reviews, we'll talk about that as well. I can call the church, I can get directions. Lots of really cool, very basic information about the church is listed here, and I can get all of this info just with a quick search on my browser. But I can also use Google Maps, the actual app itself.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and close this, and I'll open up Google Maps. We're going to do this real quick. We'll say churches near me. We'll do the same generic search. Because again, people are probably typing in something super generic like churches near me, churches nearby. They may do something more local like churches in a specific area like Wes did just a little while ago. And so there we go. There's the maps listing with a lot of different churches. And I can show the listings and I can see Promised Land Baptist Church, Westside Christian Church, Jacksonville Word of Faith Church. I can see all of these listed here. But one thing I have to ask myself is, why is Promised Land Baptist Church the first option instead of Westside Christian Church? Well, one of the reasons why is because if I tap on Promised Land Baptist Church, I can find more information about this church in their Google business profile. They've actually added more, they've got a more well-rounded profile because they've added all their information and they're updating their photos and they're updating their website. And there's also lots of other little factors like, are there members searching the address and getting directions to their church? Lots of little things that could be done to optimize your Google business profile listing.
So let's talk about some tips that we can give churches to really have a great Google business profile. All right, so some tips for how to make your Google business profile better. I can't even say Google right. All right, so first one, you already talked about this earlier, Matt, but having all of your information listed.
Yeah, so you need to have your website URL. If your church has a website, add that website there. Also, list your business times. In other words, when you're typically open and closed throughout the week. Make sure you add your church's phone number. Also, add your physical address. That's probably number 1. I should have mentioned that one at the top. That's the most important, so people can find you on a map. Also, upload photos.
Yes.
And Wes, tell them how they can do the photos.
So there's a couple ways. So the first way is using your Google business profile, you upload those photos and everything, so that way people can see what your church looks like. But also encouraging your church members to upload photos whenever they do reviews. So reviews, those are really important. Let's talk about that.
Yes, another thing that promotes your church over others in a Google Maps search is how many 5-star reviews your church has, and if you're interacting or replying to those reviews.
Yes.
And also if your reviewers are adding photos to those reviews, because those photos will then show up in the search as well. And that's great because I don't want to put more on your plate to have to constantly log into your Google business profile and upload all sorts of photos and make you have to take photos and spend all that time doing that.
Yeah.
That's not on you. You can add photos, and we recommend you do that every now and then, but you can also encourage your members to drop photos in as they take them throughout the church as well.
Yeah.
And this is really great because when people are searching and they're wanting to look up a new church to attend, a lot of people like to know a little bit about the church ahead of time and know what to expect.
What they're getting into,
Yes.
and make it recognizable. So when
Yes.
they get to the church, because that's one thing too, when you talk about photos, I'll see some churches, they'll create this Google business profile, they'll put some pictures of their church, they won't touch it for like 5 years.
Yes.
And since then they've repainted the church,
Yep.
this building's no longer here, stuff like
Yes.
this. And so then people like go to the church and they're like, this doesn't look anything like the pictures. I feel like I just got catfished. And so you definitely want to regularly update these photos as a church, but also encourage those reviews whenever people leave the photos and reviews, because that way it gives a good portrayal of what your church looks like.
And speaking of reviews, not only do you need to encourage your members to leave 5-star reviews, but you need to reply to all of your reviews, including negative reviews.
Yes.
Now, if it's a negative review and you know that the review is accurate and it's genuine and your church maybe did something wrong, we recommend you reply back and you apologize, you own up to it, and you try to make restitution, or at least you offer restitution as an option.
Yeah.
If it's a negative review and it's false,
A
or
troll
it's
on the internet.
troll on the internet, maybe someone who never even came to your church, or maybe they meant to negatively review a different church and accidentally selected your church.
I've seen that happen where
Yes.
they actually said a different church name for that church. It's like, wait a minute, this isn't the same church.
Yeah, if that's the case, you can actually flag some reviews if they're inappropriate or disingenuous and let Google know that they're inappropriate or they're false or something of that nature. And most of the time, Google will remove those negative reviews.
Yeah. So those are some really good tips to help churches have
Yes.
a Google business profile that's just awesome, that gets people to see them.
And again, we have an article that lists out how to create your business profile and mentions some of these factors as well. And we have a link to that article in the description below.
Cool. So Matt, we're coming back to the question that we originally asked, did Google kill SEO for church websites? Obviously, this is kind of not really because Google Maps is SEO in
Yes.
a way. It's not something that's separate.
Here's the thing. Google didn't necessarily kill SEO for your website, but it shifted the center of gravity.
Yes.
In other words, it's not all about your website. It's now about your website and your Google business profile and your Google Maps listing. And both of these things are working in tandem with each other. How well-rounded your Maps listing is will determine whether or not Google promotes your website in a search, and how good your website is and how much people are spending time on it will also affect whether or not Google promotes your church in a Maps listing. So
Yes.
they're all working together, and it's not necessarily that you have to think about SEO and search terms like the old way, it was all about just keywords and updating content and photos on your
Yeah.
website. But now you have to think more about just a SEO mindset, have a broader mindset where you're thinking about how to really fill up and boost your Maps listing, and also create just a really robust website and do things in tandem with each other.
Well, and Google recognized that when people are searching for churches, 99% of the time, they're trying to find a church that's near them geographically.
Yes.
And because Google Maps is geographic, that is where they're placing that priority. But also, another thing, I was just talking to another person on this that's familiar with Google's internal stuff. They were telling me that, at the end of the day, Google's goal is to keep people on their platform as much as possible. And so instead of shooting people to a church website really quick, Google has a more of an invested interest to keep you looking at Google Maps, reading reviews on Google Maps, looking at different information you've put on Google Maps, your photos and stuff. And so they're trying to keep you on their product. And so that's another reason why they're placing that weight to keep you on Google Maps as opposed to just hurrying and sending you off.
Okay.
Which is kind of funny. Now, I asked the question in a group that I'm a part of that has a lot of people that they do SEO for a living. These are professionals that they do SEO for large marketing firms. They do SEO for churches. And I wanted to read a couple things. So I basically asked the question. I said, I feel like having an awesome, up-to-date Google business profile listing really trumps spending much time on conventional SEO for smaller churches, especially churches like under 300 people. Am I crazy for saying this? And I got some comments. People came in And one guy says, inclined to agree. For our small church, our Google My Business profile, which was formerly known as Google My Business, now it's Google Business Profile, gets more traffic to our website by almost a full order of magnitude, whatever that means.
Just exponentially more, like by an order of 10. That's a lot.
Yes. Another person chimed in and says, as a former private sector SEO guy, now currently church marketing guy, you're not crazy. He says, yes, you do want to have good SEO and everything, but at the end of the day, you want to have a Google business listing, Google business profile that is really going to showcase your church, because that's what's going to really get people to find you. It's really neat to see that over time it shifted. I mean, yes, we still need to have a website that is looking good on a mobile device. It still needs to have content, not just be something static that you haven't touched in 5 years. But Google Business Profile, this is taking so much weight now, and I think as time continues to go along, you're going to see a lot of churches catch on, if they haven't already, and realize that this is where they need to spend a little bit more of their time in that area.
And honestly, if you're a small church and you don't have someone dedicated to managing your website and managing your Google Business Profile, and you're the leader that's doing all the work yourself as well as wearing all the other hats and keeping all the other plates spinning at your church, we recommend that if you're having to choose between devoting time and energy toward website SEO and time and energy toward managing your Google Business Profile, we recommend putting that energy into the Google Business Profile, because you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck that way. Yeah.
And speaking of church websites, if you're in a situation where maybe your church website is kind of blah, or maybe it's non-existent, we do church websites as well as ChurchTrac. So just throwing that out there. Well, that's it for today. Matt, thank you so much for joining me on this one. This was a fun one to talk through. There's so much good content and so much stuff that we can pull from this to make our church websites better and to make them visible for people to see it. And this is just one of the many handpicked resources that we have here to help equip your church to build the body of Christ.
And speaking of resources, if your church is not yet on Google Maps, check out our article, How to Put Your Church on Google Maps, in the description below.
Check it out.
See ya.
Thanks for watching our video. Now, if you found this helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. There you can check out our latest videos. We've got so much good content on everything from church websites to online giving, you name it. We even post a lot of our previous webinars too. See ya.